Good morning. Laying the groundwork for expanding cooperation on areas of mutual interest. Following their second summit in 6 months, President Park Geun-hye and visiting Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper wrap up FTA talks. The search for truth. The continuing probe forecasts the summoning of more NIS officials to the prosecutor's office in the days to come. Beating the competition, the increase of job hunters and the decrease in job openings. The employment war continues with the battle of the specs. And no pain, no gain, or is it? Is there an easier way to burn those calories? Meet the machines claiming to help you lose the fat with less sweat on Korea Today, Wednesday, March 12, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And good morning. Welcome to Korea Today on this Wednesday morning. I'm Ju alongside Kim Byeong-joo and Kim Byeong.
And yesterday's news, it seems to be that summit between President Park Geun-hye and visiting Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper.
Right. Of the many topics that were discussed during their summit talks, economic issues definitely topped the agenda.
That's right, the much envisioned free trade agreement, and that is our top story this morning. After 8 years and 8 months of on and off negotiations, Korea has reached a free trade agreement with Canada, the world's 11th largest economy. The two sides have agreed to lift tariffs on nearly 98% of products between the two countries in the next decade once the deal goes into effect. The biggest beneficiary of this trade pact from the Korean side will likely be the auto industry, as Canada is the world's 5th largest export market for Korean cars. With this latest deal, Canada will gradually reduce the 6% tariffs on Korean cars and auto parts to completely remove taxes in 2 years after implementation. The biggest winners from the Canadian side will likely be in the agricultural sector, particularly beef and pork, whose 40% tariffs are set to be removed in 15 years. The latest deal makes Canada Korea's 12th free trade partner, while Korea is Canada's first Asian country to have a tax-free deal with.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Choi Yoon-hee, emphasized the need for cooperation with Japan on the security front despite strained relations over unsettled historical issues. Following a visit to the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., Admiral Choi met with reporters stressing the need for greater trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Japan to counter the threat posed by Pyongyang. On the possibility of further provocations by the North, the Admiral iterated that the potential is always lingering around the peninsula without clues to where, when, and how, but that the Korean military will always maintain military readiness. The Chief of Staff was invited by his American counterpart, General Martin Dempsey, and will discuss security issues on the Korean peninsula with top U.S. commanders until his return on Saturday.
Household debt, which has been a chronic stumbling block to Korea's economic recovery, has dropped for the first time in 11 months. Figures by the Bank of Korea show household debt in January from banks and non-banking financial institutions stood at 685 trillion won. That's roughly $641.5 billion US dollars. This is down by nearly 2 trillion won from December of last year, when household debt posted an all-time high. Experts say this is largely due to year-end bonuses and termination of tax benefits at the end of last year, coupled with January being the off-season for real estate transactions.
Prosecutors are currently sifting through all the documents and computer drives they seized at the headquarters of Korea's National Intelligence Service yesterday as part of a probe into allegations that the spy agency fabricated evidence in an espionage case. For more, Arirang News' Song Ji-san is standing by at the Seoul Central Prosecutor's office. So, Ji-san, how is the investigation going?
Good morning, Shinju. It looks like more and more NS officials will be summoned to the prosecutor's office in the coming days over this latest scandal. Let's take a closer look at the allegations that have the National Intelligence Service under the microscope again.
The case revolves around a former Seoul Metropolitan Government official, Yoo Sung, who was accused of being a North Korean spy.
Yu, a Chinese who once lived in North Korea and left for the South,
was indicted last year on charges of handing over the personal information of some 200 North Korean defectors to Pyongyang. Yu was initially cleared of the charges, but the prosecution appealed the decision, producing new documents as evidence that showed he traveled to North Korea as recently as 2006. Some of his immigration stamps North Korea did not include information about when he exited, raising suspicions that the NIS had fabricated documents to set the city government official up as a spy. Seoul demanded Yu's immigration records, and the Chinese consul responded that all three of Yu's entry documents were fake. And just last week, an NIS informant, identified only by his surname Kim, attempted suicide, saying the NIS owed him money he was supposed to receive in return for forging documents. Hours after President Park Geun-hye ordered a thorough investigation into the case on Monday, prosecutors raided NIS headquarters, seizing documents and computer hard drives.
이 일과 관련한 실체적 진실을 조속히 정확하게 밝혀서 더 이상 국민적 의혹이 없도록 해야 할 것입니다.
This is the second time the prosecution has raided a spy agency since President Park came into office. The first was based on suspicions that the NIS meddled in the 2012 presidential election to draw up support for Park. Reforming the state spy agency has been an ongoing political hot potato in recent months. Lawmakers passed an NIS reform bill late last year, the first such reform since the agency was established 5 decades ago. The changes mean that the NIS cannot illegally wiretap Korean citizens or plant permanent agents illegally, and the parliament can now scrutinize its budget and allocations, which were mostly closed off before. But many think that there is more room for reforms, and that they should be directed in a way that can more benefit the general public.
The NIS has been at the center of the political controversy for over a year now since President Park took office. The intel agency now needs to revamp itself by reinforcing its defenses against cyber attacks and improving its overseas information gathering practices to better cater to the people as a public agency.
The role of the state-run spy agency must be protected to guarantee national security, but activists also point out that human rights should not be violated in the process.
So, Jason, we hear the opposition parties are putting even more pressure at the National Assembly to make sure the truth is revealed.
While the opposition leaders want a special counsel investigation into the case, and Centre Party lawmakers suggest that Chief of NIS Nam Jae-jun steps down from this post. Now watch how this develops in the coming month ahead of the local elections in June. The result of the investigation and the reactions afterwards could sway public opinions leading up to Election Day.
Yes, that's probably why the ruling Centre Party is drawing a line between themselves and the scandal. And today, prosecutors will hear directly from the alleged spy, right?
Yu is scheduled to appear at the prosecutor's office at 2 p.m. this Wednesday afternoon. Sources at the prosecutor's office say they want direct testimony from Yu to uncover the truth behind the story. They will also summon the agents of the NIS team involved in this case for questioning in the coming days. They'll look into whether this was a part of the larger, bigger operation orchestrated by the leadership of the agency. Citing officials at the agency, the questioning has already begun and will eventually extend to the higher-ranked officials at the National Intelligence Service. Back to you.
We'll have to wait and see whether the investigation results will have an impact on the upcoming local elections. Ji-san, thank you for that report. That was our Song Ji-san reporting live at the Seoul Central Prosecutor's Office.
Good Wednesday morning. Let's run through the front pages of your newspapers now. And a lot of stories this morning. We did just take a close look at the espionage case involving the NIS earlier on, but let's have a look at what 동아일보 has to say about that story as well. The headline reads, Blue House says incompetent NIS calls to dismiss NIS chief Nam Jae-jun spreads. The subheadlines say that the Blue House is open to considering all possibilities regarding the scandal, and the president is, of course, heavily disappointed with the situation. In fact, political parties are saying that the issue should be solved firstly by dismissing the NIS chief Nam Jae-jun, and the time has come for President Park Geun-hye to make a decision. And we'll leave that story there for now and go on over to 조선일보. We're going to have a look at this image here. The picture title says, "Yellow dust in China, 3 years since tsunami in Japan, the two nations suffering from natural disasters." So pretty much that's what the images are covering here, reflecting here rather. The left is a picture taken in northwest China, and on the right is of Japan. A woman has her face hidden as she's bundled up there to cover herself from the yellow dust, severe level of yellow dust. While in Japan, a man is praying in light of the third-year mark since a massive earthquake and tsunami struck northeastern Japan. And over on in 중앙일보 as well, if we take a look at this picture, people are observing a moment of silence. Oh, excuse me, we'll go back to that picture. At 2:46 p.m. in Tokyo yesterday, which is the exact time when the earthquake took place 3 years ago. And the caption explains that Japan marked the third anniversary of the devastating disasters that left nearly 19,000 people dead or missing. And we are going to come back to Korea now on a different note and have a look at this headline right underneath the image there. The headline reads, "Recruitment at 4 major companies, 20-80 ratio, saddened humanities majors." So the 20 goes for the liberal arts majors, while 80 for those studying science and engineering. And if we take a closer look at this here, you can see the ratios of liberal arts majors among the newly recruited employees at 4 major companies in Korea, and 15% there for Samsung, and 20% for Hyundai Motors, 30% for SK, and 15% for LG Electronics. So just shows how liberal art majors are having a much harder time getting jobs than those in the science and engineering field. In fact, the subheadlines, they mention that of the 5,500 new employees that Samsung recruited, 60,000 applicants were humanities majors, but only 800 of them had made it in. So it's a pretty tough situation for those majoring in liberal arts compared to those in the natural sciences. And let's finally go on to our story here on the Korea Economic Daily. And we're going to have a look at the free trade deal that was just concluded yesterday. The picture shows President Park Geun-hye and Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper shaking hands after announcing the FTA at the Blue House. They held the event as a landmark achievement, as you also heard earlier in the headlines. The title here underneath the image says holding hands with the 5th largest auto market, that is for Korea. So Korea and Canada yesterday concluded the FTA 9 years after negotiations began, and it's expected to boost Korea's exports of automobiles and textile goods and Canada's exports of beef and other natural resources. And if we have a look at this chart here, it shows the economic scale of Korea and Canada. And the blue here, the blue human here, shows the country's population. The black part is indicating the GDP per capita. The red is the ratio of the economic growth. And the numbers in the yellow box here, they indicate the amount of each country's trade scale. So you can compare the size of the two nations' economies there. And now that was a look at your newspaper headlines for Wednesday. And coming up are the stock numbers from Tuesday.
Now, some new clues on the missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 as information is surfacing that the plane appears to have made a turn to the west, giving meat to an earlier possibility that it had made a U-turn. We'll turn to Eunice Kim at the news center who will fill us in on the story. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Min-jung. We are getting in reports that Flight 370 appears to have changed course around the time it lost contact with air traffic control and veered hundreds of miles west of Malaysia at a lower altitude toward the Strait of Malacca. This according to military officials familiar with the investigation who indicated that the transponder was turned off during that time, though a primary radar was able to trace its speed and height. There were no distress signals or radio contact, and not much else is known yet on what might have happened after that point, though CNN is reporting that the Malaysian Air Force last tracked the plane over a tiny island in the Malaccan Strait called Pulau Perak.
Now, the investigations are far from over, but it seems like the possibility of terrorism is somewhat less likely to some.
Right. Some might say the investigations are just now beginning, but Interpol Secretary General Ronald Noble said yesterday that the two passengers who used the stolen Australian and Italian passports, they've been identified as both Iranians, age 18 and 29. They had entered Malaysia using valid Iranian passports and were unlikely to be part of a terrorist group. In fact, he characterized them more as people trying to migrate illegally to Europe. But the CIA is saying that it is not ruling out terrorism as a factor yet, and that no theories can be discounted at this point.
Still more questions than answers at this point. Now, let's take a look at the events unfolding in Ukraine. Now, Crimea's referendum to join the Russian Federation is some 4 days away. I believe the pressure is now on Russia, and Ukraine seems to be collecting its forces as well.
Right. More pressure placed on Russia, this time from the French Foreign Ministry, which said that it could impose a series of sanctions against the state as early as this week that would include asset freezes and travel bans if it doesn't back down on the Crimea. Meanwhile, interim leaders in Ukraine have moved to establish a new defense force on Tuesday. Acting President Alexander Turchinov said the National Guard would be sourced from veterans, as the country is said to only have some 6,000 combat-ready men, and its air force outnumbered 10-1 by Russia's fleet. Ukraine is asking for aid from Western nations, as you can imagine, this as the EU has agreed on a package of trade breaks to Ukraine worth some $700 million. And over in Russia, ousted President Viktor Yanukovych declared that he remains Ukraine's legitimate president and commander of its armed forces. Acting President Turchinov, though, countered that by saying Yanukovych left the military in such a poor state that it had to be built effectively from scratch.
A whirlwind of developments there as well. But let's get a breath of fresh air in Paris. You have some light piece of news regarding this beautiful, beautiful city, right?
Absolutely. The City of Lights, better known as Paris, topped the list of the most popular tourism destinations in the world. Worth of note, this list did come from the Ile-de-France Regional Tourism Committee, which made the evaluations based on hotel occupancies. Now, the tourism body reported that Paris attracted some 32.3 million people last year and recorded the highest level of foreign visitors in 10 years. The most number of people came from across the Channel in Britain, followed by Americans, Germans, Italians, and Chinese. And visitors from the Middle East also recorded a nearly 21% increase, while the number of French tourists actually dropped by 7.5%. And that does it for me with your international news this morning.
And still ahead on Korea Today, we'll give you a rundown of 5 key points that will give anyone a leg up in the job search war. Professor Kim Byeong-joo will talk about anyone's dream job to this year's hottest resume keywords. Stay tuned.
And Japan is called steampunk art, and it can be described as mechanical and industrial, also a Picasso of materials, and it's available to see here in Seoul. Im Yoon-hee joins us with more. Good morning, Yoon-hee.
Good morning, Young. So steampunk art has only been around for about 8 years, a relatively short period of time, but it is catching hold fast. And here in Seoul, we're hosting the biggest collection of steampunk art yet. So I'm sure people are curious what steampunk art is, but I think you'll have to see for yourself. Let's take a look. Where the Wild West meets the Victorian era, with a touch of the futuristic. This is steampunk art, a relatively newer form of art, but still one that's not afraid to push the boundaries of the imagination.
Wow, so it involves industrial art as well.
The genre took off approximately 8 years ago on the internet. That's where it came to fame. And since all the artists around the world had immediate access to view each other's work, the art form just took off. The internet was
Art Donovan
a great
is one of the
incubator
forerunners
for this particular style. And the style of itself, to put it very simply, it's Victorian science fiction, but viewed through the eyes of contemporary artists. My name is Arthur Donovan.
Art Donovan is one of the forerunners in the steampunk realm. In one of his earlier works, he recreates the astrolabe, one of the world's earliest navigational tools. Combined with the complexity of clockwork against the primitive aspect of the skull, the result is a work of art, steampunk art. As one of the most comprehensive collections of steampunk art yet, artists have gathered from around the world to share their works. The hard metals are reminiscent of a scene from a sci-fi movie, while influences from ancient cultures are visibly present. These works are all part of the steampunk art movement.
I always loved motorcycles, but I wanted to create something different. Originally, I didn't intend to create a steampunk piece. I was inspired by the panther, a powerful animal, and then I began making every piece by hand, including the sewn leather horse saddle. I combined the mythological with science and technology, and now I guess it's got a little bit of steampunk.
Since it's still in its earlier stages of development, steampunk art has some surprises up its sleeves. Some pieces are intended to be functional, while some look more like a prop from a movie. But that's the thing about steampunk. Ranging from all different styles and mediums, steampunk art has an unbridled freedom enjoyed by the artist.
The steampunk is a very messy process in of itself because you're working with virtually every art medium imaginable. You're working with wood, leather, paper, metal, all kinds of things. So what you see here is all very nice and neat. But the studio is a disaster when you're creating it because everything that has to be done at once.
Whether it be from the ancient Persian Empire or the Industrial Revolution, steampunk art doesn't discriminate. But the result is a vast expanse of diverse works, fun for the viewer and fun for the artist. The possibilities are virtually unlimited with this new art form. Only the future will tell what steampunk has in store.
So it's industrial at the same time as installation art also involves a bit of kinetic art as well. Now, steampunk art, how is it being received here in Korea?
You know, it's pretty popular at the exhibition. There are 9 Korean steampunk artists, which shows that steampunk does have a foothold here in Korea. And so you can expect with the rapid progression of the internet and the spread of steampunk, it will continue to grow here in Korea.
I'm sure it's a niche market here, but at the same time you see choppers, motorcycles that are considered art as well. Now, what are we expecting in the future of steampunk art here?
You know, Art Donovan was telling me in the report, later he told me that Korea is the perfect place for steampunk because Korea has a respect and appreciation for the past, but at the same time, a sense of modernity, which is exactly what steampunk art is, mixing of the past, the present, and the future.
And it's very interesting. I would love to check out that gallery. Thank you very much, Uni.
My pleasure.
All right, still ahead on Korea Today. It is spring and time to kind of gear up and exercise, get fit for the summer, right? Well, it is the prime time to hit the gyms, time to wake up from hibernation and get active. We take a look at some home equipment to help you get back into shape and looking great at the beach without breaking a sweat. Can you believe that?
In today's news sum up, we have angry clients of KT Corporation involved in the latest data leak.
That's right. Angry may be an understatement here. Kwon Lina joins us from the digital room to tell us more about the situation. Good morning to you, Lina.
Good morning to both of you guys. Yes, indeed, we do have another set of unsettling news coming up. Let's get right to it. At 2 p.m., we had at KT customers verifying identity theft online at number 2. But before we get to that, let's talk about what's at number 5. Jackie Chan's boy band JJCC. Jackie Chan's group, Korea, apparently revealed that they're ready to reveal a 5-band boy group. It's going to consist of 4 Korean members and 1 Chinese member. It's something for us to all look forward to this year. Now, the important story that we're all waiting for today is, of course, the number 2 story. What's going on with all those KT customers that have lost their identities? Now, as of 11 a.m. yesterday, a questionable service was made available to all of its clients on ole.com, which is a website for the major telecommunications company KT. All those who are awaiting answers regarding personal data leak were to sign on to the website and once again input their data, including name, birthday, gender, and phone number. This was to send a confirmation number to the client's phone via text message. Once this was cleared, you're required to check off the box that granted KT usage rights over the client's information, and then you would finally be able to check if your information had been compromised. Now, this is the aspect that aggravated many clients. These are rather standard procedures, however, given the circumstances, asking for personal info again is leaving customers furious, you can only imagine. The number of victim accounts for nearly 3/4 of KT's 16 million clients, and 3 people, including 2 hackers and a telemarketer, have been arrested for allegedly pocketing $10.8 million. Now, KT has announced that they will send out a mass email by tomorrow. That's Thursday, Korea time, the 13th, and they will send out an apology again and, of course, give a further explanation. We're hoping for just one thing at this point: no more personal data leaks and a solution to solve this ongoing issue. All right, let's move on to our next time frame at 5 p.m. We had talks of We Got Married once again. Apparently, Hong Jin-young and Nam Kung-min will be one of the official couples on the very long-going franchise, should I call it, or program. But the biggest story here is this. Ruled constitutional, mandatory military service for men only. What is this all about? Well, back in the year 2011, a 22-year-old man, only identified by a surname E, filed a constitutional appeal stating that it was unconstitutional for only men to be required to serve, while women were exempt from conscription. Yesterday, the Constitutional Court has ruled that the service is legitimately only for the able-bodied men of Korea. The reasoning is rather simple. Pregnancy, childbirth, and a myriad of other physiological qualities may become obstacles or even hindrances during a military service. Now, all healthy Korean men aged over 18 are subject to military duty, but E, alongside 2 other fellow men, have filed for similar cases, respectively in November of 2010 and June of 2011. While some of us may actually see military service as just an honorable duty, something that a man should go through, in the meantime, some have questioned whether this is a blockade on a career path. We'll have to just wait out and see how most people feel about that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's how I sleep at night, all the men fighting for our country. That's all I have for today. I'll be back tomorrow on News Sum Up.
Don Giovanni, the legendary story about the Spanish nobleman who seduced over 2,000 women. Now, it's one of 3 grand operas with scores by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The Korea National Opera's production promises something extra for the audience, and to tell us more, we are joined by Maestro Marco Zambelli himself in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
And it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Now, tell us briefly about this production, this Korea National Opera's production of Don Giovanni.
It's a modern production, and but for me, it doesn't set off the real story and the real music from what's happening. We are probably not going to see feathers on the hats and 18th century costumes, but the story is told as it should be.
All right. Well, Don Giovanni is often dubbed as the greatest operas that Mozart left behind. Now, what makes this one so special?
Well, for me, it's the amount of details and the amount of feelings, musical feelings, as long as real feelings that there are in this opera. It's an opera in which you can have a lot of drama, a lot of comic, and a lot of extraordinary situation, as long as ordinary situation. And normally when you have something like Le Nozze di Figaro, you have just one sort of mood. And even though the story is as detailed as the Don Giovanni story, but in Don Giovanni, the integration between the drama and the music is far superior. Yes.
What would you say, as conductor, is the absolute peak of this opera?
Everyone goes to see Don Giovanni and everyone remembers Finca da Vino, De Vieni alla Finestra, Batti, Batti, bel Mazzetto. But for me, the absolute peak is the final scene at the banquet, when the Commendatore comes back. This is a real, huge scene with the 3 basses on stage.
Well, tell us when you're conducting that last final scene, what's going through your mind, and what are the steps that you're trying to take the opera through?
Well, you are in a situation in which the music is so immense. You find the same tune that has the beginning of the overture. Actually, the opera has been written the other way around. The overture is simply a sort of best-of that Mozart puts together, so as to start to put the audience through what's going to happen during the performance. And then it starts with this dissonant chord, the scene, not the overture. The overture, he has changed slightly. But in the scene in which the Commendatore is coming back, it starts with this dissonant chord and this voice from another world that tells Don Giovanni, you asked me to dinner. You asked the statue of somebody that you have just killed to come to dinner. Well, I'm here. Then are you so brave as to come to dinner at my place?
Exactly.
Oh, this is extraordinary. Okay, it's fantastic.
I mean, I could completely see the passion just in your eyes about just describing that last final scene there. You've had a very special career, I think, your whole life in opera and music in general. It speaks for itself, right? You've been here in Korea about 6 times, and you've worked with different opera teams, right?
Yeah,
what do you think about the Korea National Opera team? How is it working with them?
Well, they are very good. They are very efficient. I have understood that they don't have a usual normal orchestra that performs always with them, so they work with different orchestras. This orchestra is very young. It's prime philharmonic. They are extremely good. They are extremely proficient. The choir is the National Korean Choir, and they have very little to do in Don Giovanni, but they do it particularly well. And the administration, the creative team, everyone is so good, and especially the singers.
And it's up to the maestro to highlight those advantages that every singer has, right?
It should.
Okay, so you've led this life and career in music. After Don Giovanni, here in Korea, what are your future plans? Are there any plans that you have, maybe returning to Korea to work again, or?
Well, this is something that before you have done an opening night, you never know. Well, I hope that people will respect my work, so they will like to bring me back. In the immediate, I have a concert series in my hometown in Genoa of sacred music in a little church of 1643, and we do a regular concert for all kind of audience. We seat 350, and we have professional musicians sitting in the audience because we are quite good. And we also have the people that turn up for the first time. We are always packed up. And we don't charge any fee. And we do a concert for Easter, it will be all Bach. Then I will go to Shanghai to do Turandot. And then to Ireland to do Magic Flute. And then to Moscow to do Anna Bolena.
All right. Well, but for now, you're here in Korea.
For Don Giovanni.
For Don Giovanni, right?
Yes.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us.
Oh, please.
The Korea National Opera's production of Don Giovanni with Maestro Marco Zambelli opens its curtains on March 12th till the 16th at the Seoul Arts Center CJ Tour Theater. Make sure you try to catch the opportunity to see the Maestro in action. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
Now, it's been weeks since the Sochi Winter Games came to a close and weeks since Kim Byeong-joo retired from figure skating. But despite all that, the Korean Olympic Committee continues to fight with the IOC and the International Skating Union over the controversial second-place finish. And with that, the situation has been brought up to the head of the ISU, asking them if everything that was needed to be reviewed was reviewed, challenging the judges' scoring during the free skating performance. The Korean Olympic Committee also added that they plan to have experts review the performances by Kim Byeong-joo and Adelina Sotnikova and even make legal investigations if required. And moving over to curling this time, as the South Korean curling team got some good news on Tuesday, as Ujeongbushi is looking to build the nation's first official curling rink. The Gyeonggi-do province and Ujeongbushi will be looking to build the nation's first official curling rink in hopes to help the Olympic team prepare for the Pyeongchang Winter Games in 2018 and the growth of the sport here in the nation as well. While there are 2 ice rinks here in the nation currently being used as curling rinks, none of them are regulation-sized curling rinks. And with the recent success of the South Korean women's curling team, the sport continues to get support. And shifting over to the AFC Champions League group stages, where the Pohang Steelers were able to pull away with a 2-1 win over Buriram United of Thailand, thanks to 2 first-half goals from Kim Tae-soo and Kim Seung-dae. Meanwhile, FC Seoul drew 1-1 against Beijing Guan thanks to an equalizer from Ko Yo-han in the 72nd minute of the match. And with that, over to some Tuesday night's V-League action. The Korea Expressway unable to make the playoffs despite beating the Hunguk Insurance Life Pink Spiders 3-2. Meanwhile, already clinching playoff berth, the Korean Air Jumbos took on LIG. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now, the Korean Air Jumbos looking for their second straight win here. Look great against the LIG greatest, combining both the offense and the defense in this game. LIG unable to win a single set here as Michael Sanchez of Korean Air Jumbos put up 30 points on the night as the Korean Air Jumbos take this match 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And large firms around the country have begun hiring university grad students, and 11 firms have announced their finalized employment plans.
That's right. The number of people they plan to hire this year has dropped by 1% from last year. So it may be just 1%, but that means the competition will be a lot fiercer. But enter Dr. Kim Byeong-joo. He will give us some answers to that problem. Yeah. And good morning. So as a professor, you deal with a lot of students. Around this time of the year, I'm sure a lot of them complain about how hard it is to land jobs, although it's not your fault.
Right, it's not my fault, but it's always jobs on the campus these days because as they get older from like freshman years moving into the senior years, everybody is very much concerned about jobs these days. And the interesting irony about Korea is that we have one of the highest level of college entrance leaving high school. But the thing is, when you leave the college finally, getting jobs that you want, a lot of people are saying that Korea marks the lowest in terms of like success ratio. That just tells us the overall competition itself is very high. So for our segment today, Korea's Top 5, we'll start with God-sent job market. Let's start with that here.
God-sent jobs. Here we go. Take a look at
this. Number 5.
I'm studying for a civil service examination. It's been over 3 years. It's hard to find a job these days, so I cannot give up.
I found a job after graduating university, but I thought a government position would be more stable. So I quit the job and started preparing for the police officer examination.
So, you know very well the Noryangjin area, the area right below south of the river when you take the train from Seoul Station. And that's the area where everybody gathers together to get their Hagwon studies and so on, to get into the jobs of government positions like a civil service exam to pass them, and also becoming a teacher. You have to pass a special kind of exam there, and then you are getting yourself prepared in those areas. Not only those just teachers and civil servants, but also civil servants include police members and then firefighters and so on, and they have all these specialized services right there.
Look at the size of the class.
Right,
yeah,
and
overall,
it's jam-packed too.
Right, and those screens in a huge classroom that you just saw. But the thing is, some of the Korea's biggest companies, they are also being viewed as God-sent jobs there, where everybody's going for. Basically, what's happening is if you compare the SMEs competition ratio in terms of getting their jobs, and on one hand, and on the other, Korea's some of the biggest companies, it's like what they say is 5 times more competitive. So.
Right, but it's not rocket science. The reason people prefer bigger companies is probably higher salary and better benefits.
Yeah, exactly, and also maybe a longer-term perspective. Meaning that if you get a job at SMEs, you're never certain about your future in the long run. But in some of the Korea's biggest companies, once you get a job there, general expectation is probably you will get to retire. At least that has been the expectation so far, even though that's changing very fast.
Okay, but the steps to get those jobs is a very difficult one indeed.
Right, indeed. So pretty tough.
Yeah, so we'll get a look at what exactly it takes for these graduates to get those jobs.
I have 3 months of internship experience coupled with a year of studying abroad. These days, this is the minimum requirement. When I look at my friends, their resumes are overflowing with experience.
I don't actually remember how many applications I've written. I've spent about 8 months last year preparing, and I'm thinking of applying to 2 places in the first half of this year. My TOEIC score is around 700, 800 now. I volunteered, I've studied abroad, and participated in competitions in fields related to my major. I must take care of my looks as well, so I've been getting skin treatments and I'm on a diet. I've had minor plastic surgery as well. Everyone does it nowadays.
All right, there's a
part
lot of
about that plastic surgery really caught my ears, but we'll get to that in a bit. Right.
Skincare as well. So it's basically building your resume, but in Korea it seems to have a few extra steps. We're talking about studying abroad, second language preferred, certificates, TOEIC, TOEFL, you name it, right?
Right, and volunteership and all that kind of stuff, basically. And they say they need this kind of credentials to be built up in your resume because the competition is so high. You have to just pass through the first filtering process where the examination officers will have to select some of the finalists, and in that process, because you have so many applications, they just depend upon this so-called objective credentials. That's why the importance.
So that's to get the paperwork through the door.
Exactly, and it costs students so much in terms of their training and all that kind of stuff.
I have some figures on that. In fact, $37,000 to get all of those criteria in, including the college tuition. So that is a lot of money for the students to manage.
Right, students that I teach, they work hard on their part-time jobs and then get themselves ready for this kind of credential building and all that. It's very hard life.
Seems like a very difficult thing to do. Now, number 3 is actually the employment industry, and I know you have something for us about that.
It's a very interesting industry these days. We can start with just traditional market of like books, for instance, and Hagwon industries that we know very well. In TOEIC market, for instance, they're talking about altogether 900 billion won worth of the market size in terms of book publishing and then Hagwon industry and so on. But the thing is, when you go to the bookstores, it's very interesting. Take a look at this one. Our staff was trying to stack up some of the books for Samsung-related job seeking.
The Samsung aptitude test.
Yes, 63 books. So they are trying to stack up, but they decided not to do it because there's just so many right there.
The SSAT.
Right.
And you have independent publishers that are kind of cashing in on this and providing the books.
Right, exactly.
Look at those books piling up.
Just continuously pouring out. The thing is also cosmetic. surgery.
Right, we have to talk about that. It was really interesting how she mentioned that, and she said it's not just her. A lot of people go through plastic surgery to get better looks and to better their chances of getting in.
And also the challenge is not only on the applicant side, but also those people who are hiring them have troubles as well, because they can't really tell the difference between different applicants, and also it's hard for them to match the pictures on one hand and the real applicants who walk in. So
with
that's
a bit
the
of
downside
exaggeration there, I think.
No,
I'm sure
actually,
they
half
do
of them
look
say that.
different.
In my class, I sometimes have trouble distinguishing students at the beginning of every semester.
They're all beautiful.
Right, exactly. So.
And because that saying of a first impression leaves a lasting impression, they all want to work towards that.
Right, exactly. So not only cosmetic surgery, but there are also different kind of training sessions that cost the students big time, big money. Sometimes even there is a session for ghost writing for resumes and then personal statements. So it's a real tough competition out there. However, though, overall, we are seeing some changes coming in, which is our number 2 item this time. That is more of open, flexible hiring process. Companies are realizing nowadays that there is a limitation in terms of traditional hiring style. So companies are going for more of the flexible and non-traditional style of hiring students.
Now, before we get to that, let's talk about some consulting business that provides some consulting to people, job applicants, right?
Which actually, hot ones to help you in your interview.
The point that I was talking about, right? Indeed, teaching students how to conduct themselves in the interviews and so on.
That's right. And this is one cram school.
Exactly. And they're showing students what to do in each interview segments, and even how to smile and how to bow and the right angle to position yourself and show your face.
교정을 좀 지금 받으셔야 될 것 같습니다. Posture, emphasis on posture.
Where do you place your leg?
Is it really this bad? Has it become this bad, really?
The competition itself is extreme.
It's pretty fierce, huh?
Right, this is very Korean style.
Well, these mock interviews definitely should help, though. It's kind of a rehearsal process.
The problem is on the hiring end, everybody acts the same way. So you can't really tell the difference.
So maybe the strategy should be not to go.
Right, everybody has the same kind of knowledge and same kind of know-how. So it's very difficult.
Let's now talk about the out-of-the-box recruitment process that you were talking about.
Right. I was going to move on to that point earlier because of these kind of challenges that are being raised by this uniformed kind of industry to help students, because everyone is turning into the same kind of style, same kind of credentials, same kind of gestures, postures in the interviews and so on. The hiring side, you should be able to tell the differences in terms of qualifications. It's becoming very hard. So what they decided to do was going for more of flexible and open kind of competition. And so more of companies are going out of this kind of style of,
That's right. Samsung led the way, right?
Samsung is one of the companies that's leading the way, and it is the top leader in that sense. And
we have a short clip, I believe, ready for us. So let's roll that, please. This is a food company. They're doing a sensory test interview. How interesting is that?
Okay, so they're picking applicants who can actually taste the way that the companies want them to taste.
Right, exactly. And rather than just relying upon the traditional ways of hiring right there.
And this is an instant noodle company.
Yep.
They have a tasting interview.
It's a pretty fun recruitment process.
Very much focused on the stuff that they are selling. So, and this is the SK's case where they're asking the applicants to come up with these different apps. And so all this creativity measuring, all those things are being introduced as a new kind of game in town.
Really interesting.
Right.
Okay, there are different recruitment processes, the traditional and some are opting for the new. And we've had a chance to look at the top 5 of the employment industry here in Korea.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, for some reason, I find it a little bit hard to believe that you can lose weight without breaking a sweat.
That is unbelievable. We'll have to turn to Angela Park and Peter Bin for this.
Good morning.
Tell us more about these items.
Good morning.
Good morning. The weather's definitely getting warmer, right? And so a lot of people want to break out of this winter hibernation rut. Have you been working out, Peter, at all during the winter season?
Not during the winter, actually, not for maybe 2 years, actually. So I definitely need to start.
All right, well, today we're introducing actually some patented devices to help you to exercise in a more unconventional way, right? So we're going to jump right to this first one right here. I'm going to start with my product here. This is actually the world's first patented sonic wave vibration plate. It's kind of a mouthful.
How does this exercise parts of your body? It's just a plate.
I know, right? And so a lot of people are a little bit doubtful of this, but it kind of works like a speaker. Think of it that way. It sends sound waves as vibrations, and this helps to kind of stimulate your muscles and get a better workout. To give you another mouthful, this is actually the first, or one of more representative devices. It's the first plate-shaped sonic wave full body vibration
Sonic wave full body vibration machine. That is a mouthful. What does it do then?
Okay, let me show you how it works. First, I'm going to turn it on, or get on actually, and then turn it on. And then I'm going to turn up the intensity here so it starts to shake, but this was actually originally designed for astronauts in zero gravity. Obviously, astronauts can't get a workout up in space, right? So they get up here and it stimulates their muscles just by simply getting on the plate. It helps to keep their muscle endurance and circulation and bone density.
So you're exercising right now without moving.
Yeah,
but doesn't exercise mean you need to move something?
Right. And so these vibrations, it targets different parts of the muscles. I'm going to get off because I sound really shaky. But basically, it works like woofer speakers. So low frequency sounds, it's sent from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top of your head. And thus, it targets certain muscles by tensing and relaxing your muscles.
I've seen these in hospitals, I believe, for rehab and also muscle strengthening exercises, right?
I think what you probably saw were either motor vibration plates. There's also seesaw vibration plates. The difference with this is that those previous ones I mentioned, seesaw targets or vibrations are mainly kind of kept in the lower part of your body, thus increasing chances for injury. Motor vibration, it can't control the vibration. But this is different because it allows for much more precise and stable vibration.
So this sonic wave contraption, it combats all those problems?
That's right. So the magnetic field is targeted to the top plate. I don't know if our viewers can see this, but the top plate, and like I said, that's what allows for it. And let me show you some different ways of exercising, getting back on here. You can control the number of vibrations per second. Now, what that does is, for example, if I set it to 12, back muscles are targeted. 6, and you put it at 6 hertz, and you raise your arms, it targets your arm muscles.
Different muscle groups are targeted.
Right. You can put it at the right level and then do kind of a slight squat stance, and then it targets your lower body muscles as well.
Wow, that is unbelievable.
So I don't know what your device can do, but...
Well, this is one better. You can exercise standing on that,
right?
But on this, you can exercise lying down.
Okay, lying down makes you gain weight. How does this exactly work?
No, this machine is going to break those stereotypes. It is the Overtech body retching machine, and the name comes from a combination of body and also stretching, body retching. And it moves these different plates in different directions, and that stimulates different muscle groups. It's awesome. Can I show you? Yes, I can indeed. It has twist mode, so we're going to go for that. I'm going to lie back on this, very comfortable, and all I need to do now. Oh, you could do this while maybe eating a packet of chips or something.
Well, that defeats the purpose.
And here we go.
Is it twisting?
Well, it was twisting. I think I'm maybe too heavy for this. Here we go.
So it's kind of like helping to stimulate by massaging?
Here you go, yes. Just like massage chairs, but it penetrates much deeper into your inner muscles. So this is the plate moving, not my hips, okay? So it's like almost uncontrollable, but this is great exercise for your pelvis, which is one of the most important parts of your body. I hope this doesn't look so wrong.
I'm going to stop it. I don't know how to stop it, but there we go. Okay, so lying down and it stretches your muscles, stimulates it.
Yeah.
It's not just a massage chair, basically.
No. It penetrates much deeper into your inner muscle, and it's for men, women of all ages. Anyone can use it.
Peter, you look slimmer.
Yeah, definitely.
All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
yeah,
your stomach is flatter now.
And you didn't even have a bag of chips there.
What about me? I was like, shaking out my muscles.
I think
gorgeous as ever.
Well, you guys look great, but I think I'm going to stick to the traditional way of exercise for
Me
now.
too.
And thank you for those items, Angie and Peter.
Thanks a lot.
Let's go for a jog after the show. All right.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Korea Today.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.